And as a forewarning from the last show, if this happens, then they will be going against a cosmic and planetary federal law by putting him and certain others who already have our documents on queue with him through the government. They would have to automatically set a standard on a world organization like myself and Kennedy and the distributions of spaceports itself to motivate mankind further.
Everybody, welcome to episode 14. Blue, how are you?
I'm good today, Mike.
We got a big show planned for today. Tell us what we're going to talk about today, Blue.
Well, one of the scenarios we'll be discussing about is NASA and the STEM programs that they distribute. Certain programs are space programs for children units to be able to establish and maintain their own higher doctrine affairs in the other cosmics. And it goes to show as one of these things between the current school statistics and the actualities of extending the mind core of an outer doctrine school district innovation needs to be something that can be established for the entire planet, especially since the funding and the foundation for the Starseeds, the Returnal Affairs doctrine dealing with extraterrestrials and all other stuff with the cosmos as well, space exploration and understanding of your outer awareness, especially with all that needs to go into effect. It's very important. It's something that's going into the next stage.
Sounds like we got a huge show, a lot to talk about today. Before we dive in, though, I do want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe and click on the notifications wherever you're receiving this podcast and or video. So we enjoy your questions. We enjoy seeing you on the Facebook group as well. Blue, let's get right into it then. Tell me about this STEM program.
Well, just so people don't get confused, because there's another attribute that means STEM, DNA infrastructure with kid units. It's not that part. There's another part that goes into the space programs where they actually go into classes, especially through NASA, learning through that own attribute. And I'm sure Space Force would have a program soon too. Or if they have not already, for young kids, even child units, to have a better learning process, not on a military stance, but on the cosmic part of it all. So they're growing on a better perseverance throughout that. Between that and STEM itself, the programs to distribute the mind better. The programs so they can innovate and maintain. Instead of staying on one cosmic planetary grid to maintain younger units of effect, are able to grow up and distribute in other realms, or maybe grow up and make a difference, not just here, but everywhere, opening a bigger and better agenda than what's being played out here. Another reason is through these school programs currently. The platform of the current school programs, and I'm sorry to say, nowadays are being messed up because of the administrations, especially with the Biden administration, with this transgender, with the non-safety dealings with the child units, guns, this, that, everything. And that goes into our next topic, the gun violence and the attribution of what they are making with laws, the extending. There can be a lot better for that.
It brings my question is to, I know there's been a space program. I know there's been space initiatives for children in school. It seems like we're at a more important stage where this needs to be expanded. This needs to be explored. Someone like Elon Musk or others should take the lead in this regard and start to develop young minds. And I don't mean just let anyone in. Obviously, you're going to have to meet certain criteria because this is important stuff right off. I mean, we can't just let everybody in, unfortunately. Hopefully there'll be a day where that'll come. But to start with, you need to have the best and the brightest to prove things, to go in and be able to be good test subjects and be able to understand where our next steps are in space. What my question is what type of time frame do you think we're talking about here? Do you think we're talking about immediate? Do you think we're talking about in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, the STEM programs are already on Access. They're already something that's going on. But the core extension of that, especially the programs with the Space Force itself, it's probably within a few years, because everything's already accelerating at a higher processing speed. We're dealing with quantum mechanics. We're dealing with distribution scenarios through the cosmic realms. We're dealing with an understanding of a deeper perception of what's going on in between the scenes.
Now, I know from just watching historical things and reading about the astronauts, they went through, especially the first astronauts, they went through a rigorous training program, several years it takes to even after you're even selected to become an astronaut. My question is are we going to use that same stringent program? Is it going to be government? Is it going to be just NASA? Is it going to be a private thing, like somebody like Musk taking it over and developing this future for our ability to go to other planets, our ability to venture out?
Well, it goes to SpaceX, NASA, obviously Elon Musk, and the dealings with the Federation, and understanding for them to move forward. When you're a young child, you have a younger mind, and it's fresh, and it's learning from a higher standard. Even when you're a teenager, you got a co-emulation help and assistance with an adult. Obviously, they're not going to go on this alone. They will have adults with them, physically. To maintaining their own understanding, because the senses of children are much higher than the senses of adults nowadays, especially. They're able to extend and open their minds and able to document from opening their own minds what they can do for the entire planet and the cosmos from that learning. Most adults can't do that. Their transcendent mind cores have pretty much downsized over time than what a child unit would be able to establish.
And it goes into so much more than just their mind, but their mind is where it starts, because you think there's probably tremendous physical endurance, physical strength must be developed. When you're dealing with young children, they've yet to physically fully develop, so you're going to need to get them trained in a certain way, and I think it is going to take some time, but I'm excited to hear the news that something like this is starting right away. I know we want to get into this thing with the guns, though. Tell me more. You alluded to it before. You said something about the schools.
Well, there's been a lot of school violence, gun distribution scenes recently, lately, especially with the fact that they released some laws. They putting into effect that help take an attribute of you don't need this to obtain a gun. You don't have a document, paper for it. You can hold it and carry it. I mean, I'm not against guns, but I am against the nonsense that is being portrayed upon it. You got to make more better laws and standards to correlate for mankind and better technologies. Because it doesn't matter whether you're on the good side or the bad side, you're still holding on to something and someone could still snap even if they're good. You got to refine what you are dealing with. And that includes that instead of these bullet mainframes, maybe remove them and make a more standard understanding of a taser effect or some type of distribution and particleization stabilizer array that would pretty much photonically destabilize a person. Instead of killing them, it would shut them down for 5 minutes. But it would have a safety switch that and a neural impasse, this type of technology, still got to be made yet, but a neural impasse, this type of technology, because of the safety switch, cannot harm any indexers, because it will be able to correlate between the seismic lines of an electromagnetic interference between two distribution points neurally. Like if they feel it's going to come out of something negative or positive, it would feel that and it would automatically just shut off. It's got them safety switches. That would be one. Another is a platonic aerodynamic reframing shield that would pretty much protect interface itself upon an infrastructure from anything getting on a negative wavelength. Humans have got to expand their minds. It's like it goes for this for children units. Stop harming each other and we'll worry more about what's really bad that's out there.
And we've talked about it time and time again. There's evil and good, beyond this world, on this world, inside this world. My question is what type of realistic time frame do you think we're talking about when we're talking about like this shield and this stabilizing weapon? Are these things that are in existence now, or are these things that were in development, or things that we're trying to get developed?
They are in development. There's something that still has to be developed. But there are other ways to distribute laws until that happens with these negative gun indexer points, including the schools. Think of the kids. You don't need anything that has to do with, we're going to have a gun there to protect the child. How about we just remove that brain frames altogether? Understanding safety goes as far as it's only going to go. Unless you use your mind motivated to move forward better.
Well, obviously,
I'm not saying take away guns. I'm saying use it more proper and learn more common sense on an equal status for protection.
Right. Because if there's enough weapons in our country right now for each citizen to have two. They could hand out two because some people have a lot, some people don't have many, but it is more than two per person in this country. I'm all for that. I'll go on a record. I'm all for electric vehicles if that's the way to go, but you can't turn a switch and make it happen overnight. Same things with the weapons. This is not a problem that can go away overnight. I fear that if we take that strong-armed approach and try to outlaw weapons, all guns right away, if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. So I agree with the fact we need to get to that point. It's just we need to be realistic with the time frame. Same thing with the electric vehicles. And the reason why I said that, you can't just flip a switch, and we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the foundation, we don't have the support, we don't have a lot of things where we can overnight go to an electric vehicle situation. So it's the same thing, I think. It's, of course, obviously different levels. But my question then is what type of time frame do you think we are talking about to be realistic that, guns are going to go away? Because there was a time in this world where guns didn't exist. Guns exist, and there's going to be a time where I agree where they're not going to exist. But what type of realistic time frame do you think we're talking about to get to that place where we have like this destabilizer gun and we have these safety shields?
Well, it depends on the scenarios with the Constitution, those in the Congress, those dealing with the federals and all the other stuff. So it depends on them and how they're going to maintain their stability and understanding between themselves and what we in the Federation have dealt with. Because they have to come to a standing point of one interval's not going to work. The other interval's not going to work. Where are you going to stand from there? So they have it either 2 to 3 year timeline to get this shit together to an understanding that there can be a better law doctrine through the Constitution and the Congress through the Federation's standard notes. And that deals especially with what Space Force and Air Force had distributed in the first place.
Now, when we're talking about the safety issues that we're talking about here, we're not just talking about schools. We're talking about everywhere, right? We're talking about this is going to be a new way of life.
Absolutely. Well, we're also talking about the other perimeters, because you may be safe on this realm, but humans still have to have the technologies and the equipment for things above or things in between. There are, like I said, there are good beings and there are bad beings on our inventory skills. So humans still would have to have some type of weapons, but not against each other like that.
Well, it kind of blows my mind a little bit and brings me to pause, because we've talked about the current administration not being on board with the good side of things, and trying to tear down and trying to create evil and all these things. My concern is they're the ones that are speaking the loudest against guns. And in my opinion, when you look back over history, the regimes and tyranny that have taken over the world in short stages, Hitler, Mussolini, people like that, one of the first things that was done was they collected all the guns. Then they limited free speech. Then they put a war out on those people, and those people couldn't defend themselves. They didn't have any weapons. So I'm not saying that the real reason why the current administration is against guns is to scarf up all the weapons. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying that's the fact. I'm saying that's what they want to do. That's the next step. You collect all the weapons, and then you create this tyranny on the people. How do we prevent something like that from happening while we're trying to get to this next level with the stabilizer type guns and the shields? How do we prevent those things from happening until we get there?
By pretty much destabling or taking away those that are on the higher levels of the elite that are causing these problems, or even an inoculation of a better federal law instead. It's like this: you got that, or you got this. People deserve a gun or some type of protection against seismic interlodes or paranormal indexer waves who have no idea what's going on. They have a right, but they don't have a right to be killing off each other. So 2 main intervals go into that. You have a right to protect yourself, but you don't have a right to kill. And if you read it, and I don't care, maybe not the Bible says everything true, but it darn well says one thing true: thou shalt not kill like that. It means that the killing on unjustified pretense against another interval, unless it's really evil on its own status code. You don't do that. You'll learn to take away from that eternal code of effect and motivate yourself forward so the planet itself can heal proper.
You know, I always flash back whenever I talk about guns or whenever I talk about laws around guns. I flash back. This is probably way before your age, Blue, but there was a show called All in the Family, and Archie Bunker was one of the lead characters on that show. And his theory of, and during this time period was the 70s when this show was popular. And his theory was because they were having a lot of hijackings of planes, people bringing guns onto planes. So his theory was, give everybody that gets on the plane a gun and you won't have any problems. Now, I want to be clear. We're not saying that. We're not saying that the government's going to issue weapons. We're saying that the government's going to be involved with the private organizations to develop weapons that are on a better plane, that are on a better system, so we're not killing each other like we are all the time with the weapons we currently have. I want to be clear. That's what we're saying, right?
More of an equilibrium. Plus, that instead of just weapons, and a better understanding between each other and the plateau you're on itself. An understanding between the good and the bad. That way, people are preparing for what could be coming next on the outer realms instead of what's going on around the realms of effect. It's as simple as that. You got to distribute from one life. If you want to go into the heavens like it is stated in biblical pretense, you cannot go there. You can't make heaven on earth until you put and polarize the attributes of a positive distribution upon its own wavelength. Otherwise, it goes unequalized.
Now,
it causes more problems.
You do a lot with the Space Force, the Federation. What is this Council of Five? How does that come into play?
Well, the Council of Five, it deals with the extraterrestrials, the older plateaus of the generated beings that were maintaining equalization points of numerous planetized grids, including this one, and as well as DNA formational codes of effect. Now, the perseverance, and I'm going to name all five, is Number one, the Orioles. The Orioles are within the Andromeda interface. So close replications to them, they are modulated altered multidimensionals and sub-inlets programmed to originate. And the reptilians' infernal DNA rep codes. The older type, not the ones currently that are being negatively bystander. Subdifusing and circulating, they come from the lunar Mars and materialization zones. So subdiffusion replicate through the Mars indexer points. And their main types of innovation where they come from is from the Pluton X solar zones by Sirius B58 galaxies. All of these beings, including this one, run on a neutral base status. They can work on either a negative or bypass positive inload. But it doesn't mean when they work on a negative, they're going to work on something really evil. They don't do that. They're an older generation node. So it's more of a neutral. The second, the Egardt, not much known is about these species. But their pretenses go about the first distribution points of the humankind's genetics, and their substructures itself. The Arcturian space status fall in provision to be able to work in an in-between lower and hyper realm with the lower and hyper realm races. So they also distribute with the ancients and the paradox and paranormal effects and in-between realms. They maintaining the sprites of light, wood elves, widespread parallel worlds, light indexers, a whole bunch of different things. Mountain gnomes, they deal with the paradox effects of an aligning attribute for that. The Jinn was an authorical statistic being. They're very curious. They will manually take over the electromagnetic grid fields. They are more like spirit nodes. They will exist in between the platforms, but sometimes you can spot them on pictures or the outline itself. And they are parallel worlds, inner stance layouts. They work and exist within the Jinn's interface and alter realm frequency outlets with the interdimensionals, undead binary codes, managing the direction that exists between the living platform and the Aether nodes. Ever heard about the Grim Reaper?
Yes.
They're kind of closer to the Grim Reaper, but they're not like, we're not going to take away your soul. We're just interested in your own binary codes because you're an in-between platform, but they also help stabilize that. Now, number 4, the Reds are the oldest replications to the Greys and the matriarchs of the Martians itself. Their intellect far perceives most others, but they're very rare in their species node. They're able to externally work with others and allow them to maintain a council of hyperdimensional photonic wavelengths and dependence on the attributions of the DNA attribution codes, thus processing a hyper-integrated point in its stead. These type of beings also help DNA replicate the Draconians interface and the reptilian species of old, before they ended up getting on a negative inoculation event. They were the main creators that dealt with these indexers. Many of the Greys around here, including their own, are actually many that dealt with DNA benefactions and the upload streams of mankind and other species throughout the cosmos because of the intellect and what they need to deal with. It also goes with the life forms and the inclinations of what they had maintained through the Pleiadian structures and Nordics, as well as the Anunnaki itself, DNA genetics, and enveloping a higher realm of effect for the life forms. They're neutral. But before I get into the last one, what another thing is about the Reds and understanding about scientists and my currency platforms these days, a lot of the ways that scientists are able to replicate making these different Syrian dog species, Lyrian cat species, avian bird species, you know how they come into effect and then they're domesticated. Right. They're given to humans because humans were a made species by higher terrestrials. So these domesticated beings were actually manufactured for mankind from higher terrestrials. They were given information too, and this will be further explained on the next show. I want to give it all away. They were given information too, higher doctrine scientists of effect to be able to establish this. That's why humans get along so well with these animals. And then why in another establishment they kind of look like their parents. They kind of look like their human biograding points. But enough of that. We'll get into that next week. All right, number 5, Zeta Reticuli, which is, I'm a fusel of one. But we are very rare species. So species that I run with, we're dealing with a higher genetic platform effect. So these species, they've worked with humankind for many generations. They work with the Federation. They work with Space Force. They are higher, hyperdimensional realm race beings. They help with the plateaus of generating things back into order again. And for higher protection inlets and documentations, the technology itself. And Zeta Reticuli have enemies. Or, they don't. The certain draconian reptilians, although Ryans mainly are our we don't like them. We're against them in a way because they want to fight against our own effect, the ones I work with, because they're cousins to that gray. But regardless, going off topic, they run with the Talos and Talos societies, mainly with the Nordic Anunnaki, Pleiadian structure, biolimitary effects of others, Andromeda, just the advancement for the main faction of humanity's next, or other cosmic realms' next motivation.
So all in all, the Council of Five is a good thing.
Yes, there are establishment codes that help establish grids of effect, planets of effect.
Okay.
Not many exist, though, because they're rare.
Now,
all of these beings that I said, they're not many. They're like, how you get to where you're almost dying off, that type of thing, almost going extinct. But they're very important.
It's interesting to me because this is the first time I had heard of this red species. It makes me wonder. And we've talked about this before about certain species, humans becoming infused or created by certain species or certain races. This is the first time I'd seen one with the color red that I can remember that I know of. Do you think that's any relation to the native peoples of America, the red-skinned people? Is that possible?
Well, like I said, genetic plateaus only go through humans' formational codes, can be routed in from higher terrestrials, other formatable redox forms. But they could have come from a higher star generation plateau, which would be a humanoid in statistic, kind of like Pleiadian or Nordic or some other type of hyper-emulated code of effect from another timeline.
So this is
readjusted into this.
This is something, the Council of Five, this is something that still goes on today, or this is something that was in the past?
No, I mean, there's Zeta Reticuli that have been established bases here off the bay and moon. Yes, this is something that's still going on. These beings are still here, but they're not in an establishment where they're correlated as much. Like I'm saying, they're getting less and less in generated beings. But what they had in mind may be something for humans to understand more. And maybe for something for humans to be able to motivate more of what they can do for this planetary realm.
We talked before, I touched on it before about your position with the Federation and the Space Force. Do you have a report, or is there anything to say from that point of view, from your position in the Federation and the Space Force?
Yes, articulated movements in the interdimensional speeds that deal with the Andromeda hyperstar units in Brisbane, Australia, and other interfaces have gone into a hyper-indexer point in iode effect to re-maintain and re-establish aeronautic distribution points above the oceanic grids. Because there has been a lot of negative outlines lately, especially with the perimeters of Florida with this correlated seed and all the other stuff. That stuff is an electromagnetic interference line. It's bioelementals in it that cause problems, but are being refixed upon plateau.
All right, interesting. And we touched a bit about 45, about Trump in the last show here. It looks like things are indeed moving forward. Is there anything that the Space Force or the Federation are they involved in that at all?
We are absolutely involved with everything that moves forward with Donald Trump's first vision, deminusing some of the publications of what he wants, which people don't want. So just take that negative part away. But another motivation is he's getting addicted. He's getting addicted, and it's going to cause a problem. He might end up in jail. And as a forewarning from the last show, if this happens, then they will be going against a cosmic and planetary federal law by putting him and certain others who already have our documents on queue with them through the government. They would have to automatically set a standard on a world organization like myself and Kennedy and the distributions of Space Force itself to motivate mankind further.
Interesting stuff. And and this may be a bit off topic here, but if you look back to the way our country has gone after people they couldn't get any other way, it was through the IRS. That's how they were able to bring charges against Al Capone, a big gangster back in the day. My question, my thought is, and my point is, I think 45 did something very smart in making it very difficult to get his taxes. They fought him all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, yes, you can look at the taxes. They looked at the taxes. There was nothing there. So that set a precedent that now we can look at a president's taxes. Now we look at what's going on today and with the indictment, to me, that says they're setting a precedent. You can go after a president and a political candidate. So what does that mean in the future? That means the people that are obviously need to be arrested and need to have their finances investigated, that puts us in the fast lane to make those things happen. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, like I said, I mean, he's got his plans. Everything's planned out. They do this. They're going to have to hear from the Federation, everyone else, including the Starseeds. We're not the only ones. We're scattered all over the place. Those on the cosmic drift of affair. He didn't make Space Force for nothing. He didn't make Space Force, especially just for the military part.
Right.
And people need to understand and accept that.
Wow.
Space Force was here for a reason.
We got a lot. We talked about a lot of stuff today. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Is there a final word you have for us, Blue?
Keep maintaining your higher stability codes. Learn the right and wrongs and learn to motivate through that into the right attribute. Doesn't matter where you're at, what you're dealing with, what you have to go through next. But what does matter is that you can make a difference, each and every one of you. Doesn't matter how far along it is. Motivate yourselves. Stay away from things that would take you away from that in the higher realms, and that of being able to motivate your own being. And learn to be an established grid base again. Humans, not just humans, they have extraterrestrial DNA for a reason. Learn to maintain that and use it proper, and maybe you'll be able to get somewhere.
Awesome. Big show today. Wow. A lot of stuff. Go back and listen to it again. Go back and watch it again, folks, because I'm telling you, you're going to hear something different. There's a lot of information there. Blue, thank you again, as always. I do want to thank everybody for watching and listening. Remember, click on notifications and subscribe so you're alerted the minute we put out new material here. Blue, thank you again. I look forward to next time.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.